what's up guys? Today I'm going to walk you through setting up my kit and show you how to set up your kit for the ultimate in comfort and playability. Let's get started. Today we're looking at a 5-piece kit. Kick, snare, 1 rack tom, 2 floor toms, hi-hat, ride, and 2 crashes. This is the exact configuration that I used with Smile Empty Soul on the most recent tour that we just finished. I'm going to take you through every step, start to finish, on how I build the core of my kit and maximize my range of motion. And for those of you with larger sets of drums, I'll give you some pointers on how to tackle placing those extra pieces. We're going to start off with this nice 5x7 area rug that you can see I've already marked off where everything goes. Once we finish this lesson and you've had some time to play around on your kit, you might also consider doing the same so your setup can be replicated quickly and easily. I'm going to start off by placing my throne at the very back end of the rug, as far as it will go. You can see I have it slightly off center as I have more stands off to the right of my throne than my left. But if you have some toys off to your left, you might want to have the throne dead center. We're going to start off with the throne as low as it will go and adjust it from there once we get the pedals in the position. Well, I just gave away the first thing we're going to place, the kick pedal. This is where the core of our kit is going to start. If you have a favorite pair of shoes you like to wear when you're playing, you're definitely going to want to slip them on real quick. Even the most minute adjustment can have a huge impact on the way you play, and that includes what you're wearing on your feet. So as we're going through this lesson, it's very important to be wearing the kicks you're actually going to be playing in, if any. We're going to start off by sitting in a nice, upright and relaxed position, and then place our kick pedal right where our feet naturally lie. Hook up the kick drum, and then we'll relax our leg real quick. Then I'm going to close my eyes and kick the pedal a few times to see where my foot naturally wants to land when I hit the kick. My foot seems to want to hit the pedal a little further back than I'd like. So I'm just going to scoot this bad boy a little bit closer to me and see how that feels. Now we're hitting a little bit closer to the middle, which is where it feels pretty natural to me. This feels like a really good angle too, and I can even move my foot up and down the pedal for some extra control when I need to. So here we've arrived at our first dilemma, whether to base our center position off the slave kick pedal or off the hi-hat pedal. This decision should really come down to which one you use more often. If you're more of a pocket guy and you don't do a lot with your feet, you might be best off favoring the hi-hat. If you're heavy on the double bass and don't really use the hi-hat pedal much, you may want to go with the slave pedal as your center bass. Personally, I base my center off the hi-hat pedal. In fact, these days I really only use a double pedal in situations where I have to. Still, for the purposes of this video, I've set it up. Placing these guys, we're going to do the exact same thing as the kick pedal, but with the other foot this time, obviously. See how that feels and adjust it accordingly. Don't worry about the hand position of the hi-hat just yet. We'll get to that in just a second. For now that our pedals are in place, let's make sure both feet are comfortable and are hitting the pedals right in the sweet spot naturally. Now, there's a problem with this position. We're hunched forward quite a bit. This is going to shift weight onto my legs and eventually make things a little uncomfortable and difficult to play. So we're gonna raise our throne up just a little bit at a time, and we're gonna try it out and see how it feels until we get to more of an upright position. Still hunched forward a little bit. Let's raise it up a little bit more. Still a tiny bit forward, but we're getting very, very close. This is starting to feel pretty good. I think maybe just one more spin might do the trick. There we go. I'm still balanced a little bit forward, but this feels very natural and very comfortable for me. It's always better to err a little bit on the side of too far forward than too far back, because leaning too far back will put stress on your back, and you definitely don't want that. Now it's time to get the snare into position. This is a question I get all the time from drummers who've sat down on my kit. Ty, how on earth do you play with your snare so high? Well, believe it or not, it's just more comfortable that way. Playing with my snare high and further back not only allows me to strike the drum at a more parallel angle, which gives me more rebound and way more control, but keeping my elbows out and not tucked in behind me allows for maximum range of motion and much more efficient movement around the kit. Just sit in your natural position, Center it off your kick and hi-hat pedals and hold your sticks out into a natural resting position. Make sure that you're keeping your body nice and relaxed, and try not to lean from your original position. This will give you an idea of where to place your snare. Once you have it in position, close your eyes and do some rudiments. Nothing too crazy or too hard, just something that requires some control and some play off the rebound to get right. After a few seconds, freeze. Keep your hands steady and relaxed, and note where the sticks come to a resting stop. You want your sticks to land in your preferred strike zone, just clear of the rim. If your stick lands on the rim and the tip is raising off the head, this means either you have the snare too high or it's angled too far forward. On the contrast, if your sticks are clean above the rim and pointing down at the head, you're too low. It's a matter of personal preference which angle you prefer to strike the snare, but I recommend adjusting your snare so that your sticks are as close to parallel to the ground as possible upon striking the drum. This will give you maximum rebound, which not only will make it a little easier to play and require less work, but having your snare flat as opposed to angled towards you will shoot the rebound upwards as opposed to back towards you, which will help you get around the rest of the kit faster. Now, let's go back to the hi-hat for a second. We have our feet in place right where it feels natural. Now let's make some hand adjustments to make sure that we're comfortable all around. These three pieces are going to serve as the main core of our setup, as this is the position we're most likely going to spend the most time in, so it's very important that we get these pieces just right. That way, no matter what kind of configuration you're playing, you know you can always come back to this core position in pure comfort. Same basic idea as placing the snare. Let's figure out our strike zone. You might like your sticks nice and close together as if you're hitting a snare or a tom, or you may like them spread out a little more on opposite sides of the bow. Figure out which position feels most comfortable to you, and then extend your arms out to match the position of the hi-hat as it's placed on your kit, and adjust the height accordingly. Again, I recommend taking a more parallel stance and keeping your arm and stick as straight as possible for maximum rebound and control. This is a timekeeping symbol, and technique is everything when it comes to keeping a solid pocket. We want to be able to feel the spaces in the rebound between the notes, so our strokes and our tempo is going to be nice and even. Depending on the size of your hi-hats or your build and technique, it's possible that your hands might not like the hi-hat where it's at, or it might be too close to your snare and you won't be able to get a solid rim shot without getting in the way of your timekeeping hand. So don't be afraid to experiment and figure out what feels best. You may have to make some compromises on either your foot or your hand position, but with some experimentation, you can find something that feels good to both. Or, if your hands and feet really don't agree on a position, you can always invest in a remote hi-hat stand, such as the DW9502LB. This will allow you to place the hi-hat virtually anywhere on your kit while keeping your foot in its most natural place. So now we've got the core of our setup in place: kick, snare, hi-hat. Before we proceed any further, let's play a little groove and see how it feels. Okay, that feels pretty good. So from here, depending on how many pieces you're using, placing the other elements is really going to come down to priority. Ideally, you'll be able to get everything in the exact spot your hands want to hit them, but in the event you do need to make sacrifices, you'll want to consider which pieces are most important to you and which ones you use the most often. For me, I'm going to start with my toms, and then we'll work in the ride and the crashes. Placing the toms, we're going to follow the same basic rules as we did with positioning the snare. It all comes down to where your hands naturally want them to be. We're going to start with the floor toms first. I'm using 14 and 16-inch floor toms on this kit, but the same idea applies regardless what sizes you have. Find your ideal strike zone and adjust the height and angle of the tom until you're naturally striking the sweet spot. And of course, on your first floor tom, be very careful not to position the drum to where it's in the way of your kick beater. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Each time you introduce a new piece, do a quick groove starting from your core and include the new piece in a fill or a groove to see how it feels and make adjustments as necessary until you're relaxed and comfortable. Next, we'll add the 16-inch floor tom. Let's get the height up to match the 14-inch tom and find the sweet spot. There it is. Quick groove, let's try some fills. Now, obviously, our rack tom is going to be placed a little further back than our floor toms, so we're going to need to extend our reach a little bit to be able to strike that sweet spot. Let's rewind a little bit back to our natural resting position for our snare. Now, we're going to extend our upper arm outward while keeping our forearms in that nice parallel position. You'll notice that as our forearms extend, they move not only outward, but up as well. Now, we don't want to reach too far, as holding that position for a while will put some serious stress on our arms. So we're going to relax from that position, and we'll know that that's the absolute furthest we can place our tom while maintaining a parallel striking position. If you're using a smaller rack tom, this should be fairly easy. However, if you're using a larger tom, or if you're like me and prefer to have your snare fairly far back, you'll need to have the tom up a little bit higher and angled towards you to access that sweet spot. I've got mine a fair bit above the snare here and angled towards me a bit. This way, I'm able to strike the drum close to the center while keeping my sticks still pretty parallel to the ground. Once you find the sweet spot, try to angle your tom back a little bit so that you're hitting in the same spot, but your stick is as parallel to the tom as possible. The ride is a complex timekeeper indeed. There's so many different colors you can get out of this thing, and as such, there's many different strike zones to keep in mind. Consider your style of playing. Do you do a lot of complex jazz patterns? Do you use the ride bell a lot? Do you strictly use the ride as a ride? Or do you crash on it from time to time? Or even all the time? These are all important factors to consider when placing your ride. Ideally, you'll be able to do all of the above efficiently, but if you're forced to make a sacrifice on placing the ride, consider what's most important to you. My general starting rule with any cymbal I place is that if I extend my arms all the way out, I should be able to reach the bell with both hands while still planted and relaxed in my throat. If I can't, it's too far away. If I can, I'll definitely be able to reach everything else. Let's check our strike zones and our angles of attack. If you tend to crash on the ride often, you might prefer a more parallel angle. Otherwise, I'd suggest angling the ride towards you just a little bit. That way you can get the bow of the ride comfortably and still come down on the ride for some crashing action efficiently as well. Alright, finally, we're going to place our crashes. I'm only going to set up 2 crashes in this example, but if you use more than 2, or if you have splashes, china types, or any other various percussion to arrange around the kit, yep, you guessed it, same basic rules apply. Moving back to the conversation about our strike point rising as our upper arms extend outward to reach pieces placed further away, we're actually going to keep this motion in mind for any additional pieces placed. Consider where we placed our rack tom earlier and where our natural position is for that particular piece, and imagine your arm rotating up and down at the shoulder while staying frozen in that same relaxed stance. Imagine the point where your sticks end up as creating an imaginary sphere of sorts. We can use this as a guide for placing our crashes and anything else within that sphere, so long as it doesn't restrict the possibility of hitting another piece along the same route. Depending on your playing style, you may prefer your crashes lower and flat, or you may prefer them higher up and angled down towards you. Me, I'm a higher up and angled kind of guy. So I'm just gonna move my arms on up and I'm gonna air drum a little bit. And this will give me an idea of where I want to place my crashes. Let's keep in mind the angle of my stick as I'm placing the crashes. Since I'm a fair bit higher up, my arms aren't going to be naturally parallel. So we're going to angle our crash so that our stick ends up parallel with it, or with the edge of the crash tilted back ever so slightly. Positioning is everything here. Tilted too far forward will have me hitting the bow of the crash, and it'll just be a glorified ride. Too far back will have me breaking sticks and even cymbals all night long. Definitely don't be afraid to put in some time to make sure you're hitting it just right. Hey, remember my rule about being able to reach the bell with both hands? Let's make sure we can do that. Okay, looks like we're all set up and ready to go. This is the process that I use when I'm setting up my kit from scratch. I hope you learned some valuable tips and tricks that'll help make your playing experience behind the kit a little bit more comfortable. Now that we're all set up, let's groove a little bit, shall we? Of course, as you're playing, you may decide to make some adjustments here and there. Don't be afraid to put in some time experimenting. You'll be surprised how even the most minute adjustment can have a huge impact in the way you play. And of course, once you're set and you're pretty sure your setup is where you want it, be sure to mark everything off on the floor and use memory locks on your stands so that you can remember where everything goes and duplicate the setup quickly and easily. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or if you found some of these tips helpful, drop me some feedback below and let me know. If you know a fellow drummer friend who might find some of this helpful, don't hesitate to hit that share button. And of course, you can keep tabs on me on social media. All links will be below in the description. Till next time, y'all.